All right, officially I'd like to call the City Council meeting to order. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City Council meeting. Let the record show that all members of the City Council are present this evening. A copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted on the west wall and is accessible to the public at any time during the course of this meeting. Next item on the agenda is item 2, the consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests. First item is item A, approve agenda as submitted. Item B, receive and place on file all notices pertaining to this meeting. Item C, receive and place on file all materials having any bearing on this meeting. Item D, approval of minutes of regular meeting on September 19th, 2016, as on file in the City Clerk's office. Item E, approval of minutes of work session meeting on September 26th, 2016, as on file in the City Clerk's office. Item F, approval of minutes of special meeting on September 30th, 2016, as on file in the City Clerk's office. Item G, approval of write-off of ambulance bad debts. Item H, refer claim of Blue River Area Agency on Aging regarding damages to their personal property to the city attorney and city insurance carrier for review and disposition. Item I, approval of public funding request from Main Street Beatrice in the amount of $500 for the Night of the Great Pumpkin. Item J, approval of public funding request from Main Street Beatrice in the amount of $2,194.53 for the Christmas Holiday Activities event. Item K, approval of public funding request from Main Street Beatrice in the amount of $632.10 for the Chocolate Lovers Shopping Day Extravaganza event. And item L, approval of change order number 2 in the amount of $176,410.18. And final pay request in the amount of $214,888.18 for the Mill and Overlay Project number 15-002. And finally, item M, resolution number 5966, to apply for assistance from Land and Water Conservation Fund for renovating Hannibal Park. Any item that any member from the City Council wants removed from the agenda? Anyone from the public? Mr. Catlin?
Mayor, I move that all the items listed under the consent agenda be approved, accepted, and are ratified as presented.
Second.
Moved by Catlin, seconded by Morgan, that items under the consent agenda be approved. And Claybaugh is abstaining from I, J, and K. Your vote, please. And that is approved, 8-0. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing to consider an amendment to Table 4-2 of the zoning ordinance number 94-13. As such ordinance relates to religious assembly use and primary education use.
I'll take this
Mr.
one.
Butcher?
Pursuant to a recent report issued by the U.S. Justice Department in regards to enforcement of what's known as RLUIPA, or the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act. They denoted the federal legislation deals with zoning ordinances essentially and how you deal with land use issues with religious assembly, essentially churches. And what it looked at over the 10-year period or the 6-year period that was covered in the report is different cases throughout the federal system where people challenged zoning issues under RLUIPA. And what it determined was that it made a recommendation that if you have zoning areas which include things like mortuary homes, clubs like your Legion clubs or your Rotary clubs if they have their own place, movie theaters and schools, all which use similar usage types as a religious assembly or a church, that your zoning restrictions should be as minimally restrictive as what you have for all of those along with churches. So churches have to have less restrictions than those, or equal to. If churches have, or religious assembly has more restrictive zoning, then they recommend making changes. And so what I did was, in conformity with that, took a look at our zoning ordinances and made some minor changes, which you'll see on page 52 of your packet. There I give you kind of my version of a red line copy that shows all the similar uses are all highlighted. And so the changes we've made is we're going to make primary education in rural residential R1 and R2 districts by special use permit, which is even with all the other zoning districts for clubs and universities, religious assemblies, and funeral homes for the most part. And then we're also going to change religious assembly from being a special use in general commercial to a permitted use in general commercial. And those are the only changes we have to make to basically bring ourselves into compliance with the case law for our LUPA. Questions?
Anybody?
No, it covers the same thing as like fraternal organization,
Yep.
Elks Clubs,
Yep.
Masonic Lodge.
Yep.
Okay.
Anyone from the public? Any comments? Mr. Catlin, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mayor, I move that the public hearing be closed at 7:06 PM.
Second.
Moved by Catlin, seconded by Party, that the public hearing be closed at 7:06 PM. Your vote, please. And that is approved 8-0. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing to consider declaring an area to be substandard and blighted and adoption of the redevelopment plan for redevelopment area number 6. Tobias, you want to talk about this? This
Sure.
is the Goosen project.
This is the redevelopment area that's down around the parcel of ground that Goosen's acquired there by Flowing Springs, Covered Bridge Heights, in that area. I think there's a map in your packet there. It shows that the ground then loops back up, comes next to the YMCA, and then on into the 16th and Scott Street area. This is the first step that is needed in order to use TIF financing, which is something that Goosen's would like to use as they continue to develop that area.
Now, is that where he wants to bring that road from the covered bridge over to
19th Street?
19th?
Yes, eventually that road would look to be built out.
Okay, what's it gonna cost us to take from, will we have to pave that road south to meet his road?
That's something we'll have to discuss as he continues to build out. As you know, that when the Good Samaritan Center went in, that was part of the agreement, as they paid for their portion and voted in favor of the paving assessment that went through to extend 19th Street down to the end of their property line. If you look to do another paving assessment, you'd have to talk to the adjoining property owners, one of which is the YMCA, one of which I believe is Mosaic, and then obviously Goosen's owns some in there as well. That may be a possibility.
Okay.
Another possibility might be you actually leverage TIF funds. If this builds out or somebody else comes in with the development that would generate the proper revenue, we could build that extension as well using TIF dollars. I would just note
But
this
it would
was,
still be to the property owners on each side too.
nope.
Not necessarily.
If we do TIF, then it's just paid for and taken care of with additional property tax revenue.
Okay.
And I would just note this plan was reviewed and approved by Planning and Zoning and the CRA.
Ted?
I don't have a problem with that. Just curious, because it's been so long, I don't remember. But in the other, this would be his fourth section of this, I think. Did he use TIF funds in any of the other? Because I
No.
think initially he didn't.
No, he's never used any TIF funds out there.
Okay.
One more thing, Toby.
Rich?
That road that he's bringing out from the covered bridge on, is he going to build that to the specs of the city, or is he gonna do like he did on the other ones?
No, everything that is west of the covered bridge will be a public road and will be built to city
Will have
specs.
to be built to city specs, okay.
Yes.
Any other questions? Anyone from the public? Mr. Catlin?
Mayor, I move that the public hearing be closed at 7:09 PM.
Second.
Moved by Catlin, seconded by Claybaugh, that the hearing be closed at 7:09 PM. Your vote, please. And that is approved 8-0. Next item is a public hearing concerning the recently developed draft 2016 Downtown Revitalization Plan.
we'll go ahead and have,
Lonnie, Pat, come on up. You both can come up. Lonnie and Pat, just for the record, state your name.
My name's Lonnie Dixon. I'm with Hannah Keelan Associates.
And I'm Pat Birch with the Shemmer Associates.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be before you this evening and for our team of Hannah Keelan Associates and Shimmer to assist your community in terms of addressing the downtown revitalization project phase 1, which we're here to briefly discuss and answer any questions you may have as well. First of all, I do want to acknowledge all the effort that the Planning Steering Committee put together through the entire process, as well as Mr. Claybaugh and Mr. Bilsbach being on that committee and giving their time and support for that project. Secondly, there was quite an extensive citizen participation process that included 2 survey pieces, one to the downtown property and business owners, as well as one that was distributed citywide with the capability through the webs to allow residents to address that survey. Combined, there was over 300 responses to both surveys, and got a lot of good feedback and support for the different components that we addressed through the Planning Steering Committee as well. Likewise, it was a process that was basically verified in terms of holding the open house as well. That very briefly, and if you have your documents with you, there's a section on page 211 under public participation that basically reports the, I'm sorry, I was ahead of myself, 2.7 that talks about the consensus of those public participation processes. And I will say the results of the 2 surveys were nearly identical that the citizens put together, as well as the downtown business and property owners. And fundamentally, efforts for a downtown facade improvement program, historic preservation, as well as business and marketing, and looking at another component of infrastructure over the long range that's needed in the downtown were all hit upon in terms of those public participation processes. Did you want to say anything in the public participation venue?
I don't know that I can add much to what Lonnie said, except that the survey process and the public participation process seem to really point to some common interests from the community of what they would like to see done.
That's the Goosen.
So
Goosen's deal.
Likewise, in the open houses, Pat put a lot of effort together in terms of getting feedback on facade improvement processes, as well as Doug Holly with Shimmer looked at the infrastructure systems in the downtown as well, both on grade as well as under grade, in terms of what are some of the long-term issues, and obviously the hollow sidewalks in the downtown and some of the sidewalk conditions in the central and western part of the downtown were kind of an overlapping of issues that concluded in his report too. The document itself does walk through kind of an entry-level introduction in terms of kind of the how-tos and the what-fors of the project, what the overall configuration of it was. Section 2 was public participation, and Section 3 focused on a little bit more of the area market analysis, if you will, in terms of population and census and economic profiles of the community in the downtown specifically. I will say one of the major issues that kind of percolated to the top in that background assessment was just the fact that the entire downtown's total assessment was roughly about $12 million. And in terms of what we want to do, or the city wants to do and progress through phase 2, could have implications in terms of the use of TIF and what that valuation is, the resulting increment that's left over, and things of that regard. But like a lot of Nebraska's downtowns, those valuations in the downtown are depressed in terms of looking at valuations of other commercial areas throughout communities too. And with Greg, we talked a lot about what those issues could imply in terms of using TIF, in terms of trying to attract reinvestment in the downtown. Likewise, if a lot of improvements are in the interior, sometimes there's not a bump in the overall property assessment of a project too. So the initial requirements to look at what the end valuation might be from making improvements to a structure compared to the initial assessed valuation can be a component that the city needs to look into and see what the long-range impacts could be on a project. But the opportunity does present itself with the undervaluation that if you did do a major project and spent, several $100,000 on a redevelopment project that was first floor and upper level reconstruction and things of that regard, there could be a huge benefit from utilizing TIF for the prior value, and the new valuation would be quite a disparity between the ending valuation. So that was basically one of the issues we talked a little bit about in the document, as well as with the Planning Steering Committee. Section 4 was kind of an overall holistic overview of what the major issues were throughout, working with the steering committee, looking into some of the priorities that we talked about all along. Like I said, the public participation process was basically a verification of what the steering committee hit on in terms of the major issues, and all along facade improvements, historic preservation, and looking at streetscape and infrastructure issues kind of were a reoccurring theme throughout the document. Being facade improvements were part and parcel of the issues that we talked about. I think I'll let Pat talk about the process that occurred both through the participation process as well as her research and configuration and recommendations.
Well, through the process of surveying the community, it seemed that there was a loud and clear interest in the potential of a facade improvement program, as well as attracting new businesses down to downtown. Both of those things really are work with each other. They're both, if you can improve facades, you can attract businesses to downtown. So those things really go hand in hand. We took a look at the existing conditions, and of course the fact that the downtown is now a designated historic district offers we feel some great opportunities as well in a potential facade improvement program and the redevelopment of buildings and such things as TIF as a financing mechanism. So, you've got, I guess the great news is you've got this really great collection of buildings that are, a lot of them very much still intact, but in need of help. I think, the good news is that you've got this great collection of buildings with historic details still there, window openings as they were originally built. Maybe they're boarded over. But with some, I think for a lot of property owners with some not major investment, that there could be, and through a potential phase 2, you could really see some great changes to the downtown through such a program as a facade improvement approach. We did include just an overview of that historic kind of assessment, some ideas about funding, and then in section 6 indicated some more specific ideas about how you might go about a facade improvement program and an example of how that could look on just selected one building. But yeah, does that help?
Lastly, I did bring along a illustration of where that target area is for phase 1. I'll let the audience look at this quick too. The black boundary being kind of the coalition of areas that we spoke with the planning steering committee in terms of what in essence is the downtown. And the consensus was to focus on the concentrated kind of pedestrian-oriented commercial areas of downtown. Includes a lot of single-story structures as well as multi-story structures, but for the most part, relatively between First Street and 8th Street, from basically the alley between Bell and Market Street north to the alley between Elk and High Street. And also illustrated is the bright blue area, and that's the footprint of the Downtown Historic District that was just recently approved through the Main Street program and their efforts. And with Michael's assistance and help, also wanted to make sure that the final black footprint did include areas that were, in essence, the kind of idealistic vision of what the downtown was. Likewise, that historic area in the blue footprint being important only because of the ability to use, potentially through phase 2, historic preservation tax credits in combination with the CDBG funding for phase 2 to better continue, grow, and maintain your facade improvement program well beyond the dollars that would be available through community development block grant funding.
Questions? Rick, do you want to add anything since you were on the committee, or Joe?
I thought I thought the process went really well. I thought we had a lot of thoughtful discussion about a lot of different issues, with the buildings and the sidewalks and everything like that. And a lot of people came up with a lot of really great ideas, and you guys orchestrated everybody input and did a really good job with that. But I just couldn't be more excited about this project. I think it would, could be just wonderful for the downtown, especially you had like 5 buildings that, I think it was 5 buildings that you had designated that could be, maybe we could point toward those, and boy, if we could accomplish getting one of those buildings right off the bat, I think that would just be really give this whole process a kickstart, and we definitely need some sprucing up downtown. So some great ideas. So I was really pleased the way that all turned out so far. You guys did a nice job.
Thank you.
Joseph, anything?
I agree with everything Rick said. They did a very good job of presenting it all out. So I think they did a good job of telling what they wanted.
Rich?
This grant's what, 350,000,
375, isn't it?
375?
I believe so.
Okay,
Yep.
oh yeah, okay, thank you.
We're here tonight. Last meeting, we actually talked about the grant, the dollars, but how do we get from point A to point B? We're at point A, so how do you get to point B, the completion of phase 1? How do you get somebody to bite? I mean, we've had things before, we've had projects before, we've had monies available before, we've got zero interest from the property owners. We approached it a different way earlier this year, that we were going to look at their buildings, and if they needed to be repaired, we were going to make them repair them. We got met with, to put it kindly, resistance. So how do we get from point A to point B? How does that occur?
Well, I think we set up the framework for that to occur. Likewise, you have some organizations in existence that can help that and perpetuate that effort. Specifically, your Main Street group, as well as the Community Redevelopment Authority. They can be very instrumental in terms of getting the word out that there are local, state, and federal incentives with and beyond just the Phase 2 funding. So from our standpoint, we were very encouraged that a lot of the comments with the Planning Steering Committee, that group was configured with representatives of not just major groups in the community, but there were several members that were downtown business owners. Likewise, with the survey piece that the downtown business and property owners put together, and the open house that was very well attended, when I looked at that sign-up sheet, the majority of them were downtown business and property owners. And they were very involved, very animated about the opportunities that this project would present. And they talked about the initial phase one that was done, I think it was 2011, and that obviously resulted with some major improvements on Fifth Street between Court and Ella. And from their vision, a lot of their comments were that they would like to see this effort be spread out throughout the downtown and not just localized in a one portion area, but potentially the opportunity does present itself through facade improvement programs that adjacent buildings could join together and even put pathways through buildings that upper levels could have joint use of, say, a public elevator corridor that TIF could help provide funding for, and make upper levels more viable for housing, for professional office space and things of that nature.
I think that the historic designation will be the difference here. In other communities, I think you've had a lot of outside developers come in and take advantage of those tax credits, with the state and federal tax credits, and that's made a world of difference in other communities, I think. So I think the difference, Ted, is going to be that historic designation that they've been working on for
2 decades.
15 years or so. So I think hopefully that'll make a big difference.
I hope so too.
I do too. Yep.
I'm just putting it.
I would just note in regards to getting us to from point A to B, C, and beyond. I think one of the first things you'll see tasked with is this body and the mayor coming together and putting together the group that will design the facade improvement program. They will be instrumental in that process, and hopefully with the sale of that, going out and helping us sell it. Obviously, I think myself and Michael and Main Street will be chiefly involved in going out and trying to hit the streets and talk with property owners and try to get them on board. One of the other things is that in regards to TIF, we've had TIF available. I believe this is our first TIF area we ever created, and it's never utilized, or one of the first, and it's never utilized a TIF project ever in the history of us having it. And so that's one of the first things. And then with the historic tax credits, you add those two elements together. One, we've never had historic tax credit opportunities, and two, no one's ever used TIF. Right there, you can get upwards of 65-75% of your costs in renovation and rehabilitation paid for, which never existed before or no one took advantage of. The other one is me and Michael did a lot of groundwork on facade improvement programs by contacting all the other communities that have already undertaken this with these dollars. And we learned that they put far less hurdles in front of people on these kind of programs than you might find with a CDBG reuse loan, or LB 840 loan. They're not so much finding out all the information about their taxes and their finances and stuff. It's more centered on the building and making sure the building's renovated or improved, and then it remains that way for an extensive period of time. And so that eliminates some of the other hurdles we've heard about with this board, is that people are kind of leery to tell government all about what's going on in their pocketbooks. And I think we've avoided that as well. So I think we're going to have an amazing opportunity to try something different.
Rich?
Well, another thing too, I think our little problem child down on 407 Court has raised the awareness of the downtown merchants. When we went through these ordinances that you mentioned a while ago, a lot of the downtown people did not realize it. Well, Main Street, I believe, had a reuse fund. They didn't know about it. They don't understand it or don't know about the TIF funding. So I think it behooves us that this administration and this council, along with Main Street and them, go down and make sure that they know what kind of funds are available. And we got $375K coming in, and that'll go a long ways. And I think if the folks downtown or any of our retail dealers and downtown realize what kind of money is there, that they'll with the awakening of that 407 Court, I think they will start using it a little bit more, because now they are aware of it.
Point of clarification, the money isn't here yet. We're going to
If
apply
we
for
get
it.
it.
These folks are going to be charged with writing the grant.
But like I said,
Or-
if we get it,
You'll be
I'll be
charged with writing the
writing
grant.
the grant.
You guys are done, huh?
Lonnie's going to help.
We're always available to assist.
Oh, great answer, Lonnie.
but if we get it, we need to do a better job of making them aware that the money is there for them to utilize.
Very good. Any other comments? Anyone from the public? All right, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mayor, I move that the public hearing be closed at 7:30 PM.
Second.
Been moved by Catlin, seconded by Billsbach, that the public hearing be closed at 7:30 PM. Your vote, please. And that is approved 8-0. Lonnie, Pat, thank you very much for coming here and your presentation again.
Council, especially Greg and Michael as well.
All right, next item on the agenda, resolution number 5967, declaring the proposed redevelopment area number 6 as blighted and substandard.
Mayor, I move that resolution number 5967 be passed and adopted.
Second.
Moved by Catlin, seconded by Cook, that resolution number 5967 be passed and adopted. Further discussion?
It's just one of the first two resolutions that we need in order to adopt what we talked about in the public session.
Any other comments from the council, from the public? And your vote, please. And that is approved 8-0. Next item is item B, resolution number 5968, to approve redevelopment plan for redevelopment area number 6.
Mayor, I move that resolution number 5968 be passed and adopted.
Second.
Seconded by Catlin, motion by Catlin, seconded by Cook. Resolution number 5968 be passed and adopted. Any further discussion needed? All right, your vote, please. And that is approved 8-0. Resolution number 5968 has been passed and adopted. Next item is resolution number 5969 to adopt the 2016 Downtown Revitalization Plan.
Mayor, I move that resolution number 5969 be passed and adopted.
Moved by Catlin, seconded by Billsbach, that resolution number 5969 be passed and adopted. Any further comments or discussion from the public? And your vote, please. And that is approved 8-0. Resolution number 5969 has been approved. Next item on the agenda is an ordinance to amend Table 4-2 of the zoning ordinance, number 94-13, as such ordinance relates to religious assembly use and primary education use.
Mayor, I move that said ordinance be given number 16-052, the title therefore be approved, the rules be suspended, and said ordinance be read by number only 3 times tonight.
Been moved by Catlin, seconded by Party, that the ordinance be given number 16-052, title approved, rules suspended, and the ordinance be read by number only 3 times tonight. A motion to suspend the rules is not debatable. Your vote, please. And that is approved 8-0. Ordinance number 16-052 by number the first time. Ordinance number 16-052 by number the second time. And ordinance number 16-052 by title the third and final time.
Mayor, I move that this ordinance number 16-052 be passed and approved.
Second.
Moved by Catlin, seconded by Morgan, that ordinance number 16-052 be passed and approved. Any other discussion regarding Alupa? Anyone from the public? And your vote, please. And that is approved 8-0. Ordinance number 16-052 has been approved. Next item is ordinance approving the subdivision improvement agreement between the City of Beatrice and Northgate Investment Company, LLC for Northgate Crossing, Second Edition.
Mayor, I move that said ordinance be given number 16-053, the title therefore be approved, the rules be suspended, and said ordinance be read by number only 3 times tonight.
By Catlin, seconded by Party, that said ordinance be given number 16-053, title thereof be approved, Rules suspended and the ordinance be read by number only 3 times tonight. Motion to suspend the rules is not debatable. Your vote, please. That's approved 8-0. Ordinance number 16-053 by number only the first time. Ordinance number 16-053 by number the second time, and ordinance number 16-053 by number the third and final time.
Mayor, I move that ordinance number 16-053 be passed and approved.
Second.
By Catlin, seconded by Morgan, that the ordinance number 16-053 be passed and approved. Discussion?
This is a subdivision improvement agreement for up in Northgate, the rare earth salts building that is going up. Usually these come around sooner when the plat is being passed, but however, we've been working through TIF and working with the owners. We finally got everything pinned down, if you will. You'll see that essentially what it calls for is for the owners, in this case, Northgate Investments Company, LLC, to obtain a irrevocable letter of credit and to file that in the favor of the city of Beatrice by October 10th, in the tune of about $174,000. That money then will be available for the city to put in the water main extension and for the electric line extension out to the new facility that's being built. So those funds are guaranteed. We'll use those funds. Our guys will put the work in. Then they'll reimburse us for all the effort that we do, all the work that we do. If there's any overage, they pay that as well. If there's anything, if our bid comes in under what we estimated, that money will be refunded back to the owner.
Questions? Anyone from the public? Your vote, please. And that is approved 8-0. Ordinance number 16-053 has been approved. Next item on the agenda is a public forum. Purpose of the public forum is for the presentation of an item by the general public to the City Council for consideration at a later date. No discussion or action will be taken by the City Council at this time. Does the council have anything for the public forum and the audience? All right, then we'll go to discussions. First item is discussion regarding a full-time code enforcement officer. And this was brought up basically because I've had some city councilmen approach me and ask me about probably giving this department just a little more support and a little more help. And Tobias, I'll let you follow up.
Sure. That was my understanding, is that there was some discussion about wanting to make that position full-time. We did look, and in your packet you see a memo from Rob Merrow kind of talking about where the department's at and those things. And while I think you'll see support for making that position full-time, I think timing in this case might be of an issue. A full-time code enforcement officer would cost just over $66,000. That's currently money that we do not have budgeted for this next year. We would be able to have some funds. We have a part-time code enforcement officer. We have that budget for about $8,000, and there's some professional services in Rob's budget for about $5,000 that we don't anticipate that we'll be able to need next year. Those funds had been in there for prior years before Rob was fully certified, when we had to bring in Mr. Fakler or Rex Barron, somebody like that to help out. But however, Rob's been able to obtain all of his certifications, so we usually don't use that outside help. But that only gives us about $13,000 of savings that we would have, which leaves us short by about $53,000 moving forward. Had we had this discussion a month ago before the budget, we would have been able to amend the budget for next year and add that in. If you remember, we initially were talking about increasing the levy a penny. A penny is equal to about $60,000. Since nothing was brought up at that time, we reduced the levy and did not increase it the penny that we had talked about. Now, obviously, there are some other places we can look in the budget to find the additional funds if that's where you guys would like to proceed, but kind of leave it up to you guys and see how you want to move forward.
Discussion. Dwight?
I was one of the ones that was asking for it too. I really think it's necessary. We got a couple guys here doing a lot of work that they could do more of if they had the time to do it. There are lots of areas around, like Rich was talking earlier. Growing season's awful around this town. It's hard to keep track. And if you go in and do a citation, or not a citation, but do a warning on them, you got to go back and follow up, maybe follow up 2 more times. And I think we need more man hours in that department.
Rich?
Most of my calls between this spring and even as of last week has been weed control, and it has been abysmal this year. Jet's been out, I don't know how many times on this weed control. And I was talking to Rob the other day, and you guys had 800 some calls or things, and over 850 right now.
Come on up, Rob.
That's a that's a lot of calls. I mean, we've had 2 in the past years ago, and if we're going to continue to grow and you've got things like that coming up, I think that we should put another full-time person on.
I don't think you'll hear any argument that says you shouldn't have a full-time guy. I think the bigger argument is just where do you find the funding? Like I said, if we had this conversation 2 months ago, we certainly could have fit in the budget. Having it now, either we're going to have to look to spend some cash reserves, or we're going to have to look to cut something else out of the budget.
Before I say anything, or have you say anything, Rob? Rick, you had a comment?
Well, when we were talking about some of the building ordinance way back when, we talked about we're going to need to give him some more help at that time. So I hope, I wish we would have thought a month ago, but we didn't. So I don't know where we can find the money to do it, but I'm in favor of having a full-time officer.
Ted?
Well, if it gets to the point where we're gonna vote on this, I'm not gonna vote against it, because I think it's important. I've made it no secret that the appearance in the community and these types of, this code enforcement has always been a priority to me, and I've made no secret about that, and I've made several suggestions over the years of what to do. My concern about this is that it's $66,000. I've talked to Tobias. We've increased the budget slightly over the last few years to tear down dilapidated structures and to get some of these things fixed. And if we, for a personal note, I think $66,000 would be better served community-wise, paying to have dilapidated properties torn down. My suggestion, as it has been in the past, is that we task this code enforcement to the police department, give them so many hours per week. If you're on a 40-hour shift, 2 hours per 40-hour work week, you're on code enforcement. They're supposed to be in every corner of the community. This is everybody's job. This isn't Rob's job as the code enforcement guys. Every sewer guy should be calling in complaints. The water main guy should be calling in complaints. The electrical guy should be calling in complaints. If you go back here and look at the people that work for the city of Beatrice and see who actually calls in complaints about code enforcement, the 2 biggest people that call in complaints about code enforcement are Tobias and Greg. I'm a distant third. We're not getting them from the other departments. This is everybody's job. And what I'm saying is that by just assigning this duty to our police officers who can write these code violations as part of their job, having them do it 1 hour out of their 40-hour work week takes up this thing, and you can put the $66,000 that you were going to spend on this to tear down some dilapidated structures. If it gets to the point where you're going to vote on this, I'm not going to vote against it because it needs to be done. This should be a priority. It's one of my priorities, but I'm just giving you another suggestion.
What I'd like to do is keep this conversation certainly going and take a look at where we can maybe cut different areas out of next year's budget for maybe building demolition. I know there's $75,000 in there for a project that may not need to happen this coming year. That could happen in subsequent years. But
There's no money in the budget for that project, by the way.
there isn't.
No, that'd be additional.
I misunderstood then in the meeting this morning. With that said, I still think we need to investigate different ways that maybe we can find ways to find additional help for your department. You've been busy, and so the floor is yours. Tell us how busy you've been.
Rob Merrill, chief building inspector for City
And,
of
and it
Beatrice.
has been improved. I don't mean to seem critical, and
Oh,
sorry to jump back in.
don't think anybody took
It's
it
been
that
an
way.
improvement since Rob has taken this over, and since you've had your part-time person. It's noticeably there's been. I'm not trying to be critical. I'm saying they're doing a great job. We're just not meeting the demand.
Yeah, I think that, one thing, when you look at our office, there's really two sides to it. There's buildings and there's code enforcement. And I would say I grossly underestimated how much work there was from a building inspection standpoint when we sat here about a year ago and had this discussion about full-time or part-time. At that time, we had 7 individuals and multiple members of the police department doing code enforcement and building inspection things all together. As we were kind of filling the vacancies, my vacancy, and then as I was getting certified. When it comes to the building side of things, in that memo, you'll see all the codes that we have adopted in there. And, there's a lot of cities in our size that have, multiple people in those positions, one for mechanical, one for plumbing, one for building, one for code enforcement, whatever the case may be. In addition to that, I would say I wasn't quite as knowledgeable as I am today on planning and zoning issues. The planning and zoning ordinance in general that allows us to clean up some things. There's violations that we can look at that I wasn't aware of a year ago. So yes, there's plenty of work. Chet's killing it, man. He's had 850 code violations since January 1st. In that memo, you'll see that Steve Prenny was right around 650 the last time he was here as a full-time code enforcement officer. Chet's working 2 days a week. He's putting in somewhere between 16 and 20 hours a week doing that. I would say we're keeping up with the complaints for the most part. We're still quite a bit reactive as opposed to being proactive on this, and I think that's a big factor. I think you guys want us all to be proactive so that we can reduce those complaints for the most part and just get them ourselves. And once we get the culture of things changed from a code standpoint, and obviously that's going to take years to change that culture to the public. So definitely plenty of work.
Rich?
Questions for Toby, and I honestly don't know, so you're going to have to educate me. We get through this year's budget. Next year, since we've got a biannual budget, can we go back in and adjust the budget and adjust the levy next year?
Correct. Come next
if
year
we
about
can-
the same time.
But if we can slug through 1 year, 66,000, we could go in at the end of next year and realign the budget and realign the levy to cover the one penny levy increase.
You won't make it up for this year.
No.
FY17 will be done. You can change it going forward for FY18, 19, and into the future years. Yes.
So we would have basically 1 year that we're going to have slugged through the thing.
Bob?
Mine's just more curiosity than anything. When I look at your spreadsheet here, you've got $12 as a part-time salary and $19.87 as full-time. Is that because of the way that fits on
Union
your
contract.
schedule? Okay.
Union contract.
And I guess the other follow-up question I have, and maybe it's more general than just this, everybody's hourly, so we don't have to worry about FSLA rule changes?
Correct.
Okay.
Rick?
I agree with what Ted was saying, that I wish that our crews that were out, our water department, our police that's out, that they would, I don't know if to have them write up tickets or whatever, but at least call in problems. But I'd like to hear from the department heads down the road of how that would affect them.
We do get, complaints from almost all departments. Is it a large number? Probably not what you'd want to see. But at the same time, we still have to process those. I mean, we still have to go out and take the photographs, inspect, re-inspect, send the letters, maybe send another letter, clean it up, send it to the city attorney, whatever the case may be, write the reports and move forward. So there's still processing in there.
But you still have more eyes out there. If it's encouraged, you'd have
That's
more
true.
eyes out there looking at
Yeah,
the
and
problems.
that's something we've discussed as well. And again, time is probably the factor, is that at some point, we would like to, maybe go and speak to each department and say, here, these are the things we're looking for that will help us, in our code efforts.
Good idea.
And we can cover some of that in the department head meetings too.
Absolutely.
I think too, maybe in the future, once you get manpower, there's things we want to go more towards, might be the building inspections. I wouldn't mind seeing a citywide coverage of sidewalks sometimes to see where the really bad ones are and get some issues cleared up on those.
There's a lot of bad
Awful
ones.
Sidewalks. And there's no sidewalks at all in some areas.
We did that assessment probably, I believe, in 2009, 2010. Mr. Steve Prenti went around, assessed every sidewalk in town. We had a big old giant map, and it was shelved after that.
What got fixed, yeah.
No,
I
nothing.
got,
It got put away.
yep. I got through committee. Rolled up and thrown. Yep. I got it that far. And then we didn't do anything with it because people made a phone call. It made them mad. You're asking me to fix something that's on my property. I don't want to fix that. So, but the whole idea of this is I'd like to reach a point where there aren't any citizens' complaints, that everything's taken care of by them. So
There'll always be complaints, but hopefully we can reduce that number.
Yep.
So where do we go from here, Mayor?
Beg your pardon?
Where do we go from here?
Why don't you let Tobias and I try to, and Linda Cook, take a look at where there could be some possible budget cuts, where we could forego something for 2017 and try to incorporate this and then bring it back to the city council if we deem it feasible.
Well, if we can slug through this year and get into 17, I would like to see a full-time code enforcement officer as quick as we can get him on.
Okay. Any other comments from the council, from the public? Rob, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Next item on the agenda has to do with repairs to the alley between 5th and 6th Street, Logan to Washington Street.
Well, I know this is an alley we talked about a number of times, and I know we talked about it at the work session as well. And frankly, we're at the point where we just need to have a vote of whether or not we want to pursue a gap and extend option, or if that's not even something you guys want to consider. And so you'll see on your worksheet, we do have a motion whether you want us to begin that procedure, because frankly, we don't want to go through the process and begin the procedure if it doesn't have any legs here and it's not going to survive. Nothing else has changed on the alley. It's still in the same condition. I believe every party's still has the same opinion they had, a month ago. So I don't think any of that stuff has changed. We're just looking for some direction as to, do you want to continue down the path of a gap and extend?
I do not support going in that direction.
I do not either.
Well, that's why we have a motion, and somebody will make a motion, and we will vote, and we will know.
We're gonna discuss it. That's what we're doing.
The other options would be to sell the alley or gift the alley to the property owners, and they take care of it themselves. That's another option.
Right. Doesn't cure the problem, but it's an option. I mean, there's some out there.
Well, like I said, I think this is getting into a neighborhood feud, and every time we get into that,
Let's get a motion.
nobody wins.
Speedy, you want to make a motion? We'll throw it on the floor and
They're talking about it a little
follow
more.
Robert's rules, and we'll discuss it.
Mayor, I move that the city of Beatrice begin the procedure of a gap and extend project pursuant to Nebraska revised statute section 18-2001-2004 in an unimproved alley located between 5th Street and 6th Street, Logan Street to Washington Street.
Second.
Moved by Catlin, seconded by Morgan. City of Beatrice begin the procedure of gap and extend project pursuant to Nebraska revised statute number 18-2001-2004 in an unimproved alley between 5th and 6th Street, Logan Street to Washington Street. Further discussion? Your vote, please. That fails miserably.
1 to 5.
That looks like
1 to
Petey's
6.
abstaining, yeah.
Catlin abstaining.
Yep.
And Fairbanks voting in favor.
All
So
right.
obviously that option is off the table, and so we will again contact property owners and try to come up with some other type of resolution. So we'll be in touch.
I know we're not
Lordy?
I know we're not a discussion point of this, but we should sell them the property and then tell them that they have to maintain it and tell them what the standard is to maintain. It's a problem, and it's going to affect, it's affecting.
It's a safety hazard.
It's not just a, yeah, as Phil says, a safety hazard. It's not just a safety hazard. If you go look at it, and I'm assuming everyone did because it was in your packet and we discussed it, so everybody went out and looked at it from the alley side and got out of their vehicle and looked at it from the alley side and got out and looked from the street side. It's undermining the alley, which is paved. It's undermining the street, which is paved. And since it's our alley, it's also undermining the property to the east. And since we own it, we're going to be responsible for that. So our failure to do nothing is not really an option. So, but.
Okay. Thanks, Ted. Anybody else before we adjourn this session? Our next regular city council meeting is going to be on October 17th here in these chambers at 7 o'clock. And then we have a work session scheduled for October 24th in this building. Mr. Catlin?
Mayor, I move that the meeting be adjourned at 7:56 p.m.
Second.
Moved by Catlin, second by Party, that the meeting be adjourned at 7:56 p.m. Your vote, please. That's approved.
7-1.
7-1.
Kirk voted no.
Clerk voted no.
I understand.
Stay focused.
Put no in there?